Welcome to SFP, Southern Fever Publishing Podcast. SFP is a resource for authors and artists when it comes to sharing in the business of creativity. Thank you for joining us today. We have an audio interview with an artist who creates and sells her own handcrafted beads or lamp work. Dawn Tomlinson, jewelry, bead artist, and president of AdopSource, which is a nonprofit organization which provides resources for the adoptee community. Would you state your name, your experience, and your current title for everyone?
My name is Dawn Tomlinson. I'm the president of AdopSource. My creative life started when I was 4 years old, and I picked up a needle and thread to make a button go back on a pair of pajamas for my mother. I knew I loved it the minute I picked that up, and I have been on a journey with creativity ever since.
In your experience as an artist and a leader of a nonprofit, what advice would you share with those getting started?
The creative process for me is a very personal journey. I'm very introverted, and I think that lends itself to being alone anyway, but that also helps me very much in my creative journey because I think it's such a solitary one. When I'm in some place where I feel my most creative is when I am alone and very much alone with no distractions. It's just such an exhilarating feeling to get there, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is the most amazing feeling that I've ever experienced. And so I keep going back. One of the ways I generate that feeling is to work in a series. And when I enter that process, I start with the first one and I just complete it. When it's completed, I move on to the next one. I don't think about it. I don't over process that in my head. I just keep making things. And by the time I usually get to the third or fourth one, I have that aha moment where I know that what I'm creating is exactly where I was headed and exactly what I want. It may be subtle to other people, but for me, that piece is what I was aiming for. And if it took me only 3 or 4 tries to get there, I feel very fortunate. My advice to people, if I were going to give advice, is that when you're working in a creative process, think about what you want and know that 10% of it is planning it out and 90% is actually doing it. And once you do the making of it, the actual nails and boards, so to speak, putting it together, whether you're working in a medium of fiber or clay, to me it's all the same thing. You work in your medium and you go for it and you just keep creating. And you keep trying to create along that series, and it will subtly change. The more you work at it, the more you become the artist, the more that piece will express who you really are as an artist. I'm totally convinced about this. And I think that's why so many really great artists will work in a series. And when you look at their work through time, you can tell it's theirs. You can just see it in their work. It leaves a stamp of who they are on that piece of art. As far as the nonprofit part of what I do, it's very left brain. It's very much just going in, making a goal, and making it happen. It's about setting a goal and just completing it. And where that ties into my ability to be an artist is where I am a self-employed artist and I run my own business. The business part of being an artist is going out and selling your work. This means cold calling. The first time I did this, I was terrified. And I will be honest, every time I walk in that door, I'm terrified. I'm still terrified. I make myself do it anyway. But when I go in, the thing that helps me go in that door is that my goal is not to sell my work. My goal is to present my work. That's my only goal. I do not think past that. My goal is to get in the door and make sure that I have the opportunity to present my work. So whether that's a gallery or a shop, I don't think it really matters. What matters is that that is my only goal. I have no expectation about how that will turn out. I have no expectation for what the result will be. I only have expectation of the process. That allows me to concentrate on the process of showing my work, not selling it, showing it. So I show my work, I explain who I am as an artist, I explain what I'm trying to do, and then I do a lot of listening. And listening has helped me as a business person so much, because people will tell you what they want. So for instance, I sell beads. I listen to people when they tell me, oh, my customers like something that's affordable. And if you listen as an artist and you let people take you along that path, they will give you the hints that you need. So the next time I go in, I promote my work as very affordable. And I make sure that that word is used. And I lead people in that direction, and I promote my work in that way, and people will respond if you are listening and you respond back to them. It goes back and forth. It's very important to me as a business person to listen to that person direct me to where they want me to go, and then as an artist come in and see if I can do that and go where they want me to go, and yet be expressive of my art at the same time. If I can accomplish that, then I have the perfect business model. Everybody wins.
What do you think other people need to know about the business of creativity?
When I think about the business of creativity, it's almost an oxymoron because I need to divide them in my head. As I said before, when I create, it's a very personal journey. It's a very solitary journey. I used to actually put it on my calendar month by month. And I would pick a few times a year where I wouldn't try to sell at all. I called it my R&D. All I wanted to do during that period of time was to try new things, new techniques, new designs, new ideas. And so all the ideas that I had collected in the last few months would go on my work table in a pile, and that was my time to play. So I would take a good 2-3 weeks at a time and just play. I would look at different colors that I usually used. I would look at different designs, and I would just play with it. At that point, after I've tried that and I have something that I think I can work with, I then have to go to the business side of it and think to myself, can I make this in a short enough period of time and charge enough money to make this worth my while? At that time, it becomes a production piece. I time myself. How long does this piece take? How long does it take to make 10 of these? If I make 10 in an hour, I can charge this much per piece, and I know that in a day's work, I am making so much per day. It then becomes a series of goals so that each product or each line has a certain number. It needs to be balanced. So for instance, as a bead artist, there is a certain bead that I make for my customers because it's very popular. It takes much longer than for what I charge for it. However, I have learned that if I do this, I choose 1 or 2 designs that I can make much more quickly so that I almost feel like I'm cheating. So instead of making 5 in an hour, I'm making 30. So if I can balance it that way and average out to 10 per hour, then I know I'm still meeting that business goal. I'm still satisfying my customers, and I'm not sacrificing the quality of my product and my creativity. And then everybody wins.
Those were some really great thoughts. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you had first started?
I wish I had known certain things when I started that I now have learned through the years. The first is that it is perfectly fine to play to your strengths. In fact, that is what I wish I had concentrated on. It's fine to understand what your weaknesses are and make adjustments for that, whether you learn new techniques or you hire it out. You can make those choices. But definitely to play to my strengths as an artist is something I've had to learn the hard way, I think. Another part of dealing with my weaknesses and focusing on them so much that it was actually self-sabotage is that I would start blaming myself for not being strong in all aspects of my art. I now know that it's much more productive not to blame myself at all, but to simply concentrate on my strengths and to build on those. You must learn the mechanics of your medium, and I really, really believe that you cannot overdo that. Use what you have, whether it's equipment or materials. I have learned to, for instance, before I buy a new piece of equipment, to use that piece of equipment that I already own in every possible way I can think of, so that I feel I have utilized that piece of equipment until I know everything about it. I know how to use it in every single way, that I have completely explored its use to me as an artist. And until I feel that I have done that, I don't feel that I can move on to the next piece of equipment. Use what you have. I was fortunate enough in college to have a professor who taught us what we called, I'm going to laugh here, limitations. But it was an incredible, powerful tool to show you what to do with a limited amount of resources. And I've used that tool so many times. So for instance, instead of saying I have all of these things that I can use, instead say, oh, I only have 5. And whatever I make has to be used with these 5 things. And when you limit yourself like that, you will find, I think, that the creative part of you really comes out. That you are forced to see those materials in an entirely different way. So in terms of being an artist and wanting to go out and buy all of these materials and realizing that my budget does not match that, I was given the tools in college to learn how to use that to my benefit. Creativity comes from within yourself, and that is what my professor was trying to teach us. It took me a long time to realize that. I thought it was just an interesting way for college students not to spend a lot of money on materials. But no, that's really not the message at all. The message is to use that limitation of materials to teach yourself to draw from within yourself as an artist. You are the artist. You are the one that can create. So what is going to take you there? What kinds of things will bring you to that point? I have to say that that limitation idea is really an interesting way to get to that point. I've used it often. Once I had a show that I was getting ready for, and I decided that my centerpiece of my show was going to be made with only materials that I had at hand. And of course, the piece I came up with was stunning. I was so proud of myself for being able to do that without purchasing any additional materials. Find who you are from deep within yourself as an artist and let that come out. Find the way to do that. That was the way I did it. I'm sure there are many other ways, but that is what the true part of what you're trying to do is all about. It's about bringing that out from within you, because that is what's going to set you apart from every other artist. That is what's going to make people say, ah, that's Dawn's piece. I can tell it's Dawn's piece because I can just see her in that work. And that's what you really want as an artist. That's your goal.
Any other advice you would give to those in a creative or artistic business?
I've already given advice, but my last piece of advice would be to say that the creative process takes time. You must, at some points in your creative process, when you feel really blocked and you can't find a way out of whatever it is you're doing, you feel really stymied, it means your brain needs to process. During that time, I often just walk away and I work on something else. Because, of course, as a business owner, we all know that we need to make money. So I put it aside and I let it sit and I work on something else for at least a few days, sometimes a few weeks. During that time, I know that my brain is taking over that creative process for me. I don't think about it during that time. I don't worry about it. I simply let it rest in my brain, so to speak. The best thing to do is not to have anxiety about this process. Just let it go. Let it flow. Don't think about it. Do something else. Create something else. Just let it sit there. Just let it rest. When you come back to it, I can pretty much guarantee that all of a sudden you'll feel this really amazing creative surge, and you will find that whatever it was that stymied you before is not there anymore. That you can finish that piece within a matter of hours, that the ideas will just fly, that it will be an entirely different approach. And if I were going to do this over and I were going to give advice, I wish I had learned that years ago too, because in the beginning, I would put it aside and I would worry. It wasn't until years later and I realized the answer always comes. It just always comes. And to just let it flow.
Thank you for your insightful answers today on the creative process. You have some really beautiful pieces in your collections. We look forward to more of your work in AdopSource. For more information, please visit AdopSource.org. This is an SFP podcast with Levi Spade at MahuStudios.com.